Hello and welcome back, adventurers. This is Captain TTRPG, and today we're talking about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Hello and welcome back, adventurers. We keep on our train with the top and bottom spells. This time we are talking about rank 8 spells. This time I will give you 5 of each, as I've always done. I'm going to be a little more obvious, hopefully, about which ones are the top and the bottom, because apparently I'm not being clear enough about that, and I apologize. On Archives of Nethys, there are only 50 spells that land in rank 8, but that's still plenty to take a look at. So this one was a little easier to get through, but lots of spells, pretty much every level we're talking about. As usual, what are the criteria I'm looking at? Things like number of actions, range, duration, targets, whether it's control, support, utility, all of that, scaling, incapacitation, ease of use, whether it's worth prepared slot or part of your repertoire. Is it good for full casters, Gish characters, martials taking archetypes, all those types of questions. With that in mind, here are my top and bottom 5, starting with one at the top and something nobody's going to be surprised to see, Quandary. This is a 2-action spell, has the concentrate, manipulate, teleportation, and extra dimensional traits, which is an intriguing one. For arcane and occult casters, has a range of 30 feet, and you target 1 creature. This can be sustained up to 10 minutes. That creature you choose, you're going to send the creature to a locked puzzle room. Once per turn, the creature can attempt a single occultism, perception, or thievery check against your spell DC. Teleportation can't be used unless the creature is capable of interplanar travel, which is a pretty big restriction. When the spell ends, the creature returns to its location or the nearest unoccupied location if its old location is now occupied. When the creature makes the check, there are a few outcomes. On a crit success, it just gets out, spell ends. On a success, that means it managed to get one of the 2 successes it needs to escape. On a failure, it gains nothing. And on a crit fail, if it had one of its 2 successes, it actually loses that. Otherwise, nothing happens. So much great stuff here. First, the creature gets no save. It just works. The creature is just sent away. So best case scenario in their eyes, on their turn, they crit succeed and have lost 1 action, but can now use the last 2 actions and have a somewhat normal turn. But that's only on a crit success. And notice that these are skill checks, and therefore incapacitation can't be a thing because there's no save. If you have been keeping up with your casting, this will make skill checks pretty difficult to succeed for most creatures. Giving the creature options does make it easier, obviously, but there's no guarantee that any of those values are particularly high. Then we have the other outcomes. If the creature does anything other than crit succeed, it loses an entire round, and it will at least lose 1 action next round. This is probably the best control spell in the game for single target, unless the target, of course, has dimension hopping travel it can do, and it can just teleport out. But that's not going to be a ton. The fact that you will always get something out of this, though, makes it an easy top-tier spell, and I assume the one that people are least surprised to see on my list. Spiritual Epidemic. Bottom 5. 2 actions, concentrate, manipulate, curse, and spirit traits. This is for divine and occult casters. Has a range of 120 feet. You target 1 creature. This has a will save attached to it. You force 1 creature to make that will save. If another creature uses a divine or occult spell on it while it's affected, that creature that casts the new spell will have to make a will save against the curse as well, so it can affect multiple targets. What happens on the will save? Well, on a crit success, as usual, nothing. On a success, the creature becomes enfeebled 2 and stupefied 2 for 1 round. On a fail, it's enfeebled 2 and stupefied 2 for a minute, and the enfeeble and stupefied 1 is permanent. And on a crit fail, enfeebled 3 and stupefied 3 for a minute, and enfeebled 2 and stupefied 2 for, well, permanent for all time. Much like with Quandary, we have kind of a lot of things to unpack here. First, we have the effects. So success having an outcome is good, but enfeebled and stupefied are not the greatest. And keep in mind, we're at rank 8 spells, so unless the effects are really solid, they're going to fall in my bottom 5 because we're at the place where spells have to be really good. So anyway, both of these, effects are decent. They're not mind-blowing, though. Stupefied is, of course, solid on casters, but casters are going to have the best will save. So, it's probably not great against them either. The permanence is almost certainly pointless in almost every scenario. Yes, there are always exceptions, and I know people like to point those out. Very true. This could be used against a creature that's going to disappear and you're going to fight later. That's not most creatures. 99% of things you fight in a combat encounter throughout a campaign, you're going to finish off in that combat encounter. So the permanence is very rarely worth it. Could be used by an enemy on you and your allies. That's probably the best use. A lot of my spells I don't talk about do fall into that bucket, and people are right to point that out because they are great from cast by enemies, but I'm looking at you as a player choosing them. So as a player, I don't love this, and we're getting into some of it. Anyway, so the permanence is pretty much irrelevant. Then we have the rider. So anyone casting a divine or occult spell on that creature will pass the curse along to them. This is in no doubt to stop their allies from casting spells on them, especially like heal spells or buff spells, which it could stop that. It also means that you're no longer casting your spells on the creature, or you have to pass the curse on to yourself potentially. Because notice, if another creature uses a divine or occult spell on it, that's it. And it's not just you, it means all of your allies are prevented from targeting it with divine or occult spells as well. So you could potentially really harm your ability to further harm this creature for just some stupefied and enfeebled. It's not, again, we're at 8th rank. This isn't the worst spell ever. It's just not good, and it's got potential to harm you if you don't think about it clearly enough. So, okay, there you go. Yes, as a GM, I might use this because it'd be really fun to throw it on the player base. They have to figure out how to get rid of the curse later on somehow. But for now, I think playing from a player perspective, I wouldn't touch this. Ferrous Form. On the top, we have 2 actions. Concentrate, manipulate metal and polymorph traits. This is for arcane and primal casters. Lasts for 1 hour. You gain resist 10 to all physical damage except adamantine. You become immune to death effects, disease, drain, fatigue, healing, important to listen to that one, non-lethal, paralyzed, poison, sicken, vitality, and void. If you had conditions from those, they are suspended while the spell is active. You are subject to rust effects, however, which are rare, but they come up. Any fist attacks you make have a d10 damage die. Your metal spells that deal damage deal 1 more damage per damage die. You can cast needle darts as an innate spell for 1 action. You don't breathe, you do sink in water, and your bulk doubles. You can dismiss this. And if you heighten it to rank 9, then the resist goes to 15 to all physical damage. This is a very cool buff. Resist 10 to all physical when physical is extremely common, even at high levels. That's great. That's a lot of resistance. I think any features that give you that are worth it, and this is a good spell to give that to you. The immunities can absolutely save you from all kinds of terrible things, especially terrible spell effects. There's a lot of death effects also once you get up to this level, and those death effects now don't affect you the same way, which is fantastic. The fist attack die probably doesn't matter unless you grab this as like a Gish, or you're taking a free archetype and it's like the top end for you. Otherwise, I just don't see it coming into play, and I don't think it's the real reason you take this. So, okay. The extra die on metal spells might be useful, but there just aren't a ton of great damage dealing spells. So it's just okay, and that's, whether you care or not, that's probably also not why you did it. They do give you a metal spell, but needle darts as an innate spell was a mistake in my mind. That means that only charisma casters will be any good with it, which is kind of sad. And, we're looking at this is an arcane and primal spells, so not easy to get a hold of as a charisma caster, generally speaking. The real reason I think it's worth it is that hour-long duration with the resistances and immunities. Yes, you are immune to healing and vitality effects. So you're not going to be getting healed from your allies. But if you do need, you can't dismiss it to take those on. This is you prepping for a really hard encounter. Oh, and don't ignore the not breathing part. It means that you won't be affected by anything that tries to suffocate you or anything that forces you into a situation where you have to breathe. And there are certainly really horrible, not only spells out there, but great traps out there that hurt you by breathing them in, and you just don't care. Is it the absolute strongest thing in the world? No, but I like it as a long-acting buff. Whirlwind. This is on my bottom 5. Takes 3 actions, has the Concentrate, Manipulate, Air, and Evocation traits for primal casters. The range is 500 feet, and you're creating an effect that has a 15-foot radius that is 80 feet tall. Lasts for 1 minute, sustained, and there's a reflex save involved. You can only cast this if outside or in a location with a minimum height of 80 feet to the ceiling. Creatures in the area, when summoned, make a reflex save. The area is difficult terrain. If lifted in the area, the creature will have a fly speed equal to their speed while remaining within it. Once per turn, when sustained, you can move this 30 feet. Each creature then it passes through makes a save. A creature can only be affected once per round. A creature hit by it takes 5d10 with that reflex save, but also on a crit success, take no damage. On a success, they take half damage. On a failure, they're going to take the full damage and be lifted 10 feet into the air. And on a crit fail, they're going to take double damage and be lifted 20 feet in the air. So we've got to the point where, again, this isn't a bad spell. It's just worse than the other spells at this rank, in my opinion. Yes, the damage is low, right? 5d10 at this rank is not good. In fact, it's very low for an AoE spell. The lifting of enemies is good, though will they have to waste actions to escape inside? I mean, yes, but it's also not crazy. If they're lifted and dropped, they will land prone, which is a win. So, moving this through creatures and then they get lifted up and fall again, great. Moving at 30 feet around is actually good too. That's enough distance that you can actually cover a good area. They might be able to get beyond the reach, but you can likely grab at least somebody when you're moving at 30 feet. The problem is the setup. So first we've got 3 actions, and I hate 3 action spells just because it doesn't give you a chance to do anything else alongside it, right? That's rough. Although we're getting pretty high level, you might have haste on you to give you that stride, but let's assume you don't. The big one for me is that it must be outside or a room with 80-foot ceilings. I run outdoor campaigns, well, at least combats in campaigns, a fair amount. But I don't know that I've ever used 80-foot ceilings. Well, maybe once or twice ever, but not a lot. Being so restrictive makes it really hard to take on a spontaneous caster because you just don't know if you'll ever be able to use it, and you've just wasted one of your options there. And as a prepared caster like a druid, you might know enough to know when you should use it. So like that day you might be preparing it because you know you're going to be outside all day, but you really have to know what you're getting into. Lots of campaigns run just tons of indoor encounters, and this just doesn't fit. If it was slightly larger, or the difficult terrain would also mean more, but most creatures, especially at this level, can also get out of this with 1 action. So all that together, it's not bad. I don't think it's worth trying to deal with all of the constraints to just get an okay outcome. Hypnopompic Terrors. This is one of my top 5s, has 2 actions, has the Concentrate, Manipulate, Rare, Emotion, Fear, Illusion, Incapacitation, and Mental traits. That's a lot. It is an occult spell, has a range of 30 feet, and affects up to 10 creatures. They're going to get a will save. You force all creatures targeted, that's you're choosing the creatures you want, to make a will save against 6d12 mental damage. On a crit success, they take nothing, half damage on a success, but they also become frightened 2. On a fail, it is the full damage, frightened 2, and paralyzed for a round. And on a crit fail, you're doing double damage, frightened 2, and paralyzed for 2 rounds. Yes, it has incapacitation. But I don't think this is about targeting that one creature in the room that's really high level. You want to target the room. This is a great candidate to use with Reach spell, the spell shape, to give it a 60-foot range. Anyway, this is about crippling everything in the room that isn't the boss creature, right? If anything is your level or lower, then you're looking at just dropping this bomb and just paralyzing a bunch of creatures. The fact that Frightened 2, by the way, still happens on a success is also great. So even if they succeed, you're still dropping all of their ACs and saves and everything. You might even catch a boss with this. It's entirely possible, and at least get them Frightened 2, which isn't going to feel bad. Half damage at Frightened 2. Anyway, if you get anything to fail, let's say you targeted 10 creatures, which might be more than there are. Let's say you targeted 5 creatures and even got 2 to fail. It's going to feel amazing. Those 2 creatures are just out for a round. They're out of combat for a round. You can just ignore them and just go Nova down the others. If they just get paralyzed and Frightened too, keep in mind, paralyzed is going to make them off guard, and then Frightened 2 is going to drop their AC by 2. They have a -4 AC to all of your marches. You're just going to be critting them down. The rest of the party is just going to choose anybody who is paralyzed. If they are and you're not worried about ignoring them, you can just Nova them down. Easily one of my favorite AoE control spells against large hordes or minion sets, or however you want to look at that. That's really what this is great for. Own Companion. Bottom 5. This is 3 actions. As the Concentrate, Manipulate, and Conjuration traits is for primal casters. This has a range of 30 feet, and you target your companion. This lasts for 1 minute, sustained. And there's a reflex save involved. So you're going to clone your companion exactly as they are. When you command, you both of those 2 companions get the 2 actions, but the clone has to use the same actions as the primary in the same order. So if you had your primary stride and strike, then the clone has to stride and strike. You can go opposite direction. They don't have to go the same direction or anything. It's not like they're like sitting in the exact same spaces or anything. They just have to use the same actions. And you can't use any actions that have a limited number of uses per day. So more basic actions. If it must use an action it can't use, this clone that is, then you just do nothing with that one. It's just wasted. The clone disappears if it drops to 0 hit points, or of course if the spell ends. Once again, it's not a terrible spell. This feels like an animal druid spell, but Beastmaster is a great archetype, so it works for other primal casters too. Having 2 pets that both gain actions when you command is honestly pretty solid. They can even flank with each other, potentially, and confuse enemies. Giving more bodies to take attacks from allies is also really good. If they're hitting a clone especially, okay, attack them all you want, it's fine. So what is it that I don't like? Well, for one, it's extremely narrow. This only works if you have a companion, and while that can be excused, right, because you only take it if that's the case, what it really suffers from is that you have to sustain the spell and command your animals every round to get value. You're using 2 actions just to keep value out of this spell. Yes, you might be hasted. Again, I want to mostly ignore that, and then maybe this is okay, but unless you've got some way to free action sustain or command your pets, or free action sustain, this is going to feel really taxing and really painful. Power Word Stun. This is in the top 5. 1 action is the Concentrate. Uncommon, Auditory, Enchantment, and Mental traits is for arcane casters. Has a range of 30 feet. Targets 1 creature. Can only affect the same creature once per 10 minutes. So just keep that in mind. The outcome depends entirely on the creature's CR level. If the creature is level 13 or lower, it is stunned for 1d6 rounds. If it is level 14 or 15, it is stunned for 1 round. And if it is 16 plus, it is stunned 1. This might not be a surprise if you watched my rank 7 video, because I like this style of spell. It's predictable and it just works. No save, no ignoring it, just happens, unless of course the creature is immune to mental effects or something like that. Obviously the 13 or lower is crazy, but you're hitting something that's 13 or lower, so you probably weren't worried about them anyway. Not worried about that one. The 14 and 15 is a really strong effect. Now keep in mind, when you gain this spell, when you gain access to it, as a full caster, you are level 15. So this is an equal level creature when you take it at level 15. And wiping out a turn for 1 action yeah, that's going to feel really good. So those are really worth, hitting with this spell. Then there's the high level effect. Now, removing one action doesn't sound like a lot, but against the right creature, it can be crippling. A dragon can't both fly and use a breath attack with only 2 actions. That's not a thing it can do. Casters might be able to get a spell off, but they can no longer escape your marshals. That behemoth might not have the actions required to make it to the party, right? A big, slow, beefy marshal may not make it up and make any attacks. While the spell slot is a tall order because we're an 8th rank spell, the guaranteed outcome with the fact that it only costs you 1 action, so you can just kind of toss it alongside another powerful spell, means that I can easily see using this every day. It won't be something that if I prepare it, I'm definitely going to use it. There's no question. I'll use it at some point. And in a repertoire, if I just need to remove an action or remove a creature's next round, I can just do that. That flexibility and power and guarantee is what I like. Burning Blossoms, bottom 5. 3 actions: concentrate, manipulate, enchantment, fire, and plant. This is for arcane and primal casters. Has a range of 120 feet, 30-foot radius, 100-foot tall cylinder. Lasts for 1 minute and is going to require a will save. You grow a massive tree in a 5-foot square with branches that reach out to the extent of the radius. Any creature ending its turn under the branches takes 66 fire damage. Any creature fascinated by the tree must use at least 1 action moving toward it each turn. Any creature that can see the tree or is under the tree must make the will save. On a crit success, the creature is unaffected and becomes immune for 24 hours. On a success, they are unaffected, but they still have to make a save at the end of its turn to see if it gets to stay free. Assuming you can see the tree, that is. On a fail, the creature becomes fascinated until the end of its next turn and has to make another save. And on a crit fail, they become fascinated until the spell ends. Fire damage to the tree actually won't break it, and regular things, though, still do break fascination. Good old fascination. My least favorite effect in the game. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We have 3 actions, which I don't love, but the area is very large. The damage 66 is terrible at this level, honestly, and it's also unlikely to even happen. It only happens at end of turn, and leaving the area, if not being difficult terrain, really isn't very hard. It's not a huge area when there's no difficult terrain. Also, there is no effect on success or crit success, so most creatures just won't be affected. That's just kind of how saves go, unless they're much lower level. If they are, they just become fascinated. And as soon as any of your allies does anything to any of their allies, fascination breaks. Just how fascination works. So this is visually interesting, would feel epic when you summoned it, and then would do very, very little. So I don't know that I think it's worth doing, because even when it does what it should do and it works, it doesn't work well. Unholy Army, top 5. 3 actions: concentrate uncommon, incarnate, and unholy spells for divine and occult casters. This has a 100-foot range. You have 8 choices of creatures to appear with various different abilities. Importantly, aside from damage, there are so many effects you can bestow on failed saves, like sickened, clumsy, drained, prone, confused, frightened, deafened, speed reductions, and or persistent damage. I am a big fan of incarnate spells. Did a whole video on incarnate spells, and this is one of my favorites, actually. Are they the most impactful spells in the entire game? No, not always. But they are very cinematic, and the right ones can be really effective. I love that there are just so many choices here. You can find at least something that fits your current situation and will affect the enemies you're dealing with in the best possible way. And incarnate spells never hurt allies. That's how they're designed. So there's no stopping them. They always get their first round and their second round, and you just decide how best to position them, and that's about it. You don't worry about anything in the next round except for how it exits. The average total AoE damage from them is somewhere in the vicinity of 55 on a fail, which is not mind-blowing, but it's still pretty good even at this rank. So with damage, with cool riders, big effects, and tons of choices, all that variety means that you're gonna get something out of this when you use it. Why I like it. Prying Survey, bottom 5. This is 1 minute cast, has the Concentrate, Manipulate, Uncommon, Divination, and Scrying traits. For Arcane and Occult casters, a range of 120-foot emanation, lasts for 1 hour. You create 8 invisible floating eyes. You can get an understanding of what they see. They are solid though, and so don't go through barriers. They take any damage and they die. They can be used to seek, so you can seek from the eyes. They even provide info when in exploration mode, even though you have to go at half speed to benefit from both scouting and searching. So that's kind of nice, you get both, but you are having to move it to half speed. So information here is great together, right? It's always good to know more. And this lasts a long time. It can be used to gather all kinds of info, especially as you go about in exploration mode, which I think is probably one of the best uses. Once you're in an encounter, the eyes might survive because they're invisible and all, but just watch out for AoE damage because they'll just get instantly destroyed. So this is really useful in cramped dungeons and even out and about, saving you from ambushes, which I like about it. The question is, how often will that matter? Honestly, I struggled with the bottom 5, so I might even take this on certain creatures. There's so many good spells and there's so few bad ones that I don't think this is terrible. I just think you have to really know how you plan to use something like this to get value out of it. So it's not a go-to, and there's challenges using it effectively in the right environment. And it, obviously it can just be wiped out. Beware of traps also. Traps can just wipe the eyes out. I just don't think it has a level of impact I'm looking at to rank it well in my 8th rank spells, but there's certainly arguments to be made for it. And now that we've seen that rank 8 spells are pretty good, let's go ahead and jump into some honorable mentions I have here. First one is Falling Sky. This is the bane of flying creatures. It is guaranteed damage with possible prone effects against flying creatures, and it is for arcane and occult casters. Then there's Prismatic Wall. This has a set of layers of the wall that are difficult to get rid of, and they're just terrifying to pass through. So, having to make a save each layer or take some horrible effect, that's pretty awesome for, again, arcane and occult casters. Then we have All is One, One is All. It's basically a way to swap positions and health for the entire party as you like, because it's like, hey, there's this collective positions and health totals, let's redistribute everybody, and it can completely change the look of a combat, and that's for arcane and primal casters. And finally, Moment of Renewal. This is a 2-action end of day rest type spell, so it's going to give you rest as if you rested at the end of day and get rid of effects that would end naturally when you go rest, and you get the healing for it. You just don't get like spell slots back and stuff, but it's a nice heal for 2 actions with getting rid of certain effects that are really painful, and this is for divine and primal casters. As for good upcasting options, I would recommend Dragon Form, because this is the rank at which Dragon Form gets its big boost to stats, and it becomes a truly viable polymorph, which I need to do a polymorph video because I think it deserves some looks. Then we got Summon Dragon. This is the first time you're able to summon adult dragons like the Adult Omen Dragon, and that's going to feel like a heck of a partner to have out there. Then we have Illusory Scene. The effects now from Illusory Scene can include creatures talking while they're moving around and all that, and it's permanent. So you can really set up quite the scenario for enemies to wander into. And finally, Zephyr Slip. For a reaction, you and up to 5 allies in 30 feet can fly directly away from a creature that approaches you. So it's just a whole everybody back up, reposition, and reset, which is really valuable. And that's it. Which rank 8 spells do you take on your characters? Did I put a favorite of yours in my bottom 5? Let me know in the comments, and as always, adventure on.